Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me. And that's not the 3,757 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. We are back to the Xbox 360 this week for the 30th episode that I'm doing talking about this great system. We are doing one that was requested by you guys. So I had a few people requesting some backwards compatibility games that are disc only. So we got a bunch of games this week that we are talking about that are backwards compatible on the Xbox One and Series X consoles, but you need the disc. Now we're going to be talking about a lot of games. Every single one of these I've talked about before, so we're going to go through it relatively quickly. But if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out.
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
So just as a heads up, if some of you guys didn't know, the Xbox One and the Series X are backwards compatible. Now, there are a lot of backwards compatible games that I guess are usable on the disc, but also I think allow you to either buy it on the store, or maybe once you've unlocked it with the disc, you can save it and then play it without needing to use the disc. To be honest, I'm not too sure. I haven't done too much of this, but these ones do require you to still use the disc. Starting off with a game that just got a remaster that came out on the PS5 and I think on other consoles, but for the most part it was a digital only release. It kind of got overshadowed by Lollipop Chainsaw, but this is Suda51's Shadows of the Damned, which in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions who've played both, this is the superior game. This might be one of the best Suda51 games that no one ever talks about. I actually did some of the QA testing back at Electronic Arts in 2010, I want to say, for this particular game. And I remember back then I really enjoyed it. I probably was a little too harsh on it at the time, versus now I like it even more. There was a video series I did back in the day called Hated Gems, and this was always one that I wanted to cover on it. More or less, it was me taking a second look at games that either I didn't like or that the community said weren't good. So something like Zelda 2. And then I would see, is my opinion correct? Is the general community opinion incorrect? And this was a game that I remembered not liking all that much. But then the longer I got away from it, yes, the humor is very crude, little out there, but overall something that I wish I could go back to with today's games, as well as the mechanics were super interesting with the whole light and dark mechanic, the just the variety of the levels. It really took that sort of third-person over-the-shoulder formula and gave it a lot more of a through line, level-based type progression, and yeah, the humor, while sophomoric, it's still pretty damn fun. So Shadows of the Damned is a game that is backwards compatible if you have the disc. Highly recommend checking this one out. Highly recommend picking up the remaster. I myself am guilty of not doing that. I probably should, but that is a good one and a good one to start this off with. Now, another one that I just spoke about that someone did call out in the comments that is backwards compatible is Batman Arkham Origins. So this is the fourth game in the Arkham trilogy that no one talks about because it's not part of it. And it's one of those things where it may have aged better now in retrospect than we realized at the time of it releasing. I'm not going to talk to it too much. I just covered it, but that is another one that if you want to play a game on your Series X or on your Xbox One, this one is disc only backwards compatible. And what's nice about these backwards compatible games is that sometimes they will be enhanced on the Series X or on the Xbox One, either graphically, performance-wise, nothing content-related. Still pretty damn cool. Now, another high-ticket game that I've covered before is the legendary 50 cents Blood on the Sand. Now, when I picked this game up, I got it for $80. It was going for around $100, and I think now it's around $70, $60. One I highly recommend. I'm also going to be covering co-op games in the future, and this is one I'm heavily going to recommend for that video. But even if you're playing it by yourself, it is still very fun. It may just on the surface look like another run-of-the-mill third-person over the shoulder shooter like Shadows of the Damned, but it's got a fun progression system. It's been playing as 50 Cent. If you're a fan of his music, it's everywhere. Even if you're not a fan of his music, it's still got really solid gameplay and just the hilarity of the fact that there is a game, which I guess is a PS2 game too, but this is the expensive one. It's on PS3 as well, but you're looking to play some backwards compatible Xbox games, you need this. It's been delisted off the store forever. I think you can guess it's because of that music, but really, really fun game and one I would recommend picking up. All right, we got a twofer here. So I've covered this series before. It is the adult Pikmin for layman's term, and that is the Overlord series. We have Overlord 1 and Overlord 2. These are the 360 versions. I know there's a pseudo-enhanced version of Overlord 1, I think, that came out for the PS3. But I don't know if yeah, and they got 2 as well, the PS3. But either way, these are backwards compatible. And unlike Pikmin, it's a little bit more edgy, but in my opinion, a little less intuitive, not as enjoyable. I played a little bit of both of these games when I covered them on the longer series. I appreciated it, but it wasn't nearly as intuitive as Pikmin is, which I think is the downfall of these kind of games. If it doesn't grab you immediately, then it's easy to see why people grow tired of them. But there you go. If you want to give it a shot and you have a Series X or an Xbox One, these are ones you can pick up and they will play day one. Speaking of another series that I just finished covering all of the entities for the 360, this one's surprising to me. So of the Assassin's Creeds, the 7 games that got physical releases on the 360, 4 of them I think you can play without needing the disc, but if you want to have the disc, which is ironic because, I mean, most of these games came out on the Xbox One, but yeah, you can play Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, my personal favorite, and then randomly Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. So all of these you can play on the Xbox Series X or the Xbox One, backwards compatible. It's almost the entire America's collection other than Brotherhood. I wonder if the America's collection... Anyways, but very fun games. I've talked about all the Assassin's Creed. It is one of my favorite series from the 360. Black Flag is a phenomenal game in its own right. You can get into this game without any other basis in the Assassin's Creed line and have a good time. The naval warfare is top-notch. Assassin's Creed 3 has some excellent... original Revolutionary War American story, combat in the snow, something you hadn't really seen in the Assassin's Creed. And then Brotherhood is the one that really first started introducing having, like a stable of assassins that you could order around. And in my opinion, not as enjoyable as the other two, but there are people that are big fans of Brotherhood. Now, one that I fell in absolute love with that was donated to the channel was First Encounter Assault Recon, otherwise known as F.E.A.R. I went through, and this is one of the few games during this entire 200 plus games I beat that I played that I actually beat. I really enjoyed this game. This one is backwards compatible. Cannot recommend this game more. It really does have that old school, Doom clone feel, but with modern sensibilities, and really one of the last gasps of this style of game made by, a big time publisher before it now is, they still have these kind of games, but now they're more indie, retro, Doom clone inspired, that kind of thing. And then the standalone DLC that came out for it, the F.E.A.R. files, that is also backwards compatible. Now, once again, you can play this game completely independently of this game. So if you have either one of these, and this one is pretty damn fun too, has 2 campaigns. I did not beat this one, but this is probably the game that I want to pop back in more than most because I really enjoyed F.E.A.R. Just seeing the bullet time, taking out the enemies was such a satisfying gameplay loop, something that I didn't know I needed, especially after I played F.E.A.R. 2 first, and thinking that F.E.A.R. 2, which kind of played like a Call of Duty, was a really solid game, but man, going back to the original F.E.A.R., and having it feel like it was a game designed in 2002, 2003. I mean, it came out in 2005, I think. So it makes sense. Phenomenal game. Cannot recommend it more. So yes, F.E.A.R Files, backwards compatible games that you need to pick up and have in your collections. Another one that might surprise you because this is the only edition that's backwards compatible with the disc is the Doom 3 BFG Edition. So not just regular old Doom 3, you gotta have the BFG Edition. And if you know, this also comes with a way of playing Doom 1 and Doom 2 on the 360, which for a time was the most modern way you could play it on a console. Now, since then, there has been the Doom Anniversary collection. I think I have that on the Switch. So that's probably a far superior way to play it on this. Even back in the day, looking at people talk about it, they would say this is not a great way of playing it. But as I like using the 360 controller, I'm still down with it. I originally bought this copy because I was doing a series called Noob Gamer. And of course, trying to show Jen some of the highlights of gaming's history. How could I not try and show her the first Doom? But never got around to it. Maybe we will one of these days. But yeah, that's another one that's backwards compatible. It has all 3 games on it. And I think it has most of the... I mean, Doom is weird. Like, they release map packs or level packs. I don't know. I'm not a Doom head. You'll have to educate me on that. But that is another one to pick up if you want some interesting backwards compatible games on the 360. And like I said, we're going fast through this, so I got about 6 or 7 left. So this is another one I've spoke to. Probably my favorite fighting game on the 360, though that's not saying much because it's probably the only fighting game on the 360 I've ever played, and that is Mortal Kombat 2009. One of the coolest things this did, other than just doing the single player where it kind of retold the events of Mortal Kombat's 1, 2, and 3 in a almost an alternate history, and then allowed it to kind of diverge, which, God, can you imagine? Back in 2009, we really liked that thing, and now it's like, can we get away from that as much as possible now? But back then, it was novel. You know, this is before the MCU really took off. This was 2009. But another thing it had that was really interesting was the crypt feature. So in the crypt, you could unlock things with tokens or coins or points you earned throughout the game, and then unlock concept art, unlock costumes, unlock videos, very cool things. I think you could even unlock characters during it. And I know they've brought the crypt into later Mortal Kombats, but it has never been quite as good as this. Now, I didn't get clarity if it's all versions of Mortal Kombat 09. I would assume, because there's the version that comes with all the DLC that I should still pick up, because it has this is when they started coming out with the really crazy DLC characters like Jason Voorhees, RoboCop, Predator, Alien, things like that. I think this one had Freddy Krueger, Jason, maybe Michael Myers, things like I could be wrong. Let me know which ones it had, but still a very, very fun game, and one that I would wholeheartedly recommend to Mortal Kombat fans, especially if you're fans of the older games. And I haven't played any of the other ones. You know, I have Mortal Kombat 10, I have Mortal Kombat 11. I do not have Mortal Kombat 1, and probably won't be picking that up, but really enjoyed Mortal Kombat 9. Now, here's one of the games that was one of the bigger surprises when I went around and did these 360 games. And it's funny because I saw Jason Graves cover this game, and he did this thing where he went to all these different Goodwills. And this was one of the games he found at the Goodwill hunting that was actually really good. I think he found the 50 Cent game too, which is funny. But that is Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. Now, I didn't know this, but there was a remaster of this that came out in the PS4 generation, I think, or like 2019. What is up with all these remasters coming up that are like 7 years old? I really missed the time when we would remaster games that came out, you know, over 20 years ago. But then again, because games look the same when they came out in 2010 versus 2024, you know, even if it is remastered, it's nothing like when it was 1990 to 2004. But anyways, this game was surprisingly fun. I was really surprised at how enjoyable this was. I want to say it came out around the same time Skyrim did, so it completely got ignored. But yeah, there's remasters of it, but if you can find this, it's like a $5 game, backwards compatible, and super, super enjoyable. It allows you to play as different classes, but you're not locked into that class. There's a thief playstyle, a mage playstyle, and then a warrior playstyle, and it kind of felt like a World of Warcraft light in a good way. in a good way, in my opinion. So this is one I would wholeheartedly recommend. If you ever see it, pick it up. It is one of the better better value finds I found in doing any of these 360 things. Which, side note about the 360, I got my year-end review from Xbox, which I have not had a year-end review in 7-8 years from Xbox, because I just don't play it anymore. And we covered, or at least I played 216 360 games. I got over 300 hours on the 360, number one being Cult of Saga, which of course. And I unlocked all this gamer score and all these achievements, but still, in 2024, I put 300 hours of gameplay on the 360. If you had told me that last year, I would not have believed you. So thank you guys so much for encouraging this series, allowing me to really uncover so much greatness on the 360. And, you know, I'm probably going to be putting a lot more hours on it next year as well. All right, last few we got here. This is a Telltale Games. It's funny that I didn't see any of the other Telltale games on the backwards compatible list for disc only, but this one was, and that is Jurassic Park the game. Now, sadly, you are not playing as any of the characters you know. You're not playing as Muldoon, Grant, Ellie Sattler, Ian Malcolm, but you are playing as John Harding, which, if you know the books, has a little bit bigger role than in the movie. And in this, it's kind of a side tangent where you, almost like Resident Evil 3, where you play before the events of Resident Evil 2 and then after the events. So in this game, the first chapter has you basically being there before Nedry gets there, and then right after the aftermath of Nedry. And then right at the end of the first chapter, Grant and all them escape, and then you're left to deal with the aftermath. The T-Rex comes after you, the raptors. It's fun. There's a little bit more faith to the books in it, because they were talking about raptor nests. But, I mean, it's a Telltale game. It's a Telltale game, though it is before they really hit their stride with the Walking Dead formula. So, in my opinion, it's a little bit more risque, a little bit better, and also a little bit more tedious at times. But it allows you to restart. So unlike the Telltale games, where almost always if you fail something, the game just progresses, this is a game where if you fail, you go back and then you have to redo it. So there's some people that will like that. There's some people that will not like that. I like that. You know, one of the things and you don't have that annoying, they will remember this, or they will remember that every 5 seconds, feeling like you said the wrong thing. Alright, so another game that I just covered last time, which, yes, I did realize that I could go into the options and turn on the HUD, and maybe that would have made me enjoy the game more, but that is Peter Jackson's King Kong. I was a little too harsh on this game, mainly because I just wanted to play as King Kong. If I had stopped playing after my usual, 1 to 2 hours, I would have probably given it much more of a glowing remarks than if I had just kept pushing forward trying to get to King Kong. But come on, it's a King Kong game. Let me get to the damn King Kong. As far as just the production value, doing faithful to the movie, it's pretty damn accurate, pretty damn cool. And yeah, I really did not remember much about how violent that Peter Jackson King Kong movie got. But yeah, with the bugs and everything, getting all the guys, like there's just tons of the people in the crew just get eaten left and right. I don't remember that being the case in the original King Kong. But anyways, that is one that is backwards compatible. That's probably another reason why it's so expensive. It's funny, if you'll notice, some of the games on this are more expensive, and they have been more expensive since before the FOMO hit, and then luckily has gone away. But not all of them. Like Overlord 1 and 2 have always been kind of affordable. Kingdoms of Amalur, the Assassin's Creed. Alright, and then last really expensive one here we're going to talk about is a game I covered back in Halloween time, and that is Silent Hill Downpour. Now, as someone who's still a Silent Hill noob, I can understand why the games on the 360 compared to the one on the PS1 were just nowhere in the same ballpark. I played Silent Hill 1 for the first time last year, and it was visceral, it was terrifying. It's funny, your mind makes things scary than when you actually see it, and I think that's why a lot of those old PS1 horror titles are so much more tangible and scary, not just because you have the tank controls that make it feel like you can't react as much, but also because the fog of war, that sound effect where they have the ringing going is so much more terrifying than in Silent Hill Downpour, where it felt like I was being chased by a disembodied cloud. Now, it was still unsettling, don't get me wrong, I still didn't like it. And I didn't like it in a way where it was too close to reality, where I probably got more disturbed. But that's just also because I'm just not into those kind of games. Versus Silent Hill 1, even though it was much more, much more mind-melting, I was able to digest it better because of that. But anyways, Silent Hill Downpour is another one that is backwards compatible on the 360. So if you are interested in those games, get it now before it rockets back up. There is a PS3 version too. All right, and then the last game we're going to talk about, I also did the QA testing for back in, I want to say this was 2000, I think it was 2010, might have been 11, but that was the remake of an old PC game that I had never heard of, and that game is called Syndicate. And Syndicate was a surprisingly competent shooter. It's funny, when I did the QA testing, I did Syndicate, I did Alice Madness Returns, and then I also did the... the Shadows of the Damned. And Syndicate probably was the one that I knew going into it was going to get the least amount of fanfare, but also one of the ones that I thought had the most competent gameplay as far as tightness of controls. But it just, they focused way too heavily on the strikes, where they tried to make it a co-op game. And it just was a little bit too far ahead of its time, and also not the right venue for that game style. You needed something like a Destiny, or something like the ability to do those strikes over and over again by getting more and more gear and progressing. Versus in this, it just was more of a score attack, and it didn't have the same level of levity that you would have in, say, a Left 4 Dead. Because that's what they were trying to be. They were trying to be another Left 4 Dead with the co-op in that, but it just missed the mark. The game itself, though, the single-player game, is really, really fun. And this was a game that got up to around $25. I think it's come back down to $15. I want to say I picked this up for around $7 or $8. Like, it's fluctuated quite a bit. But another good one I would keep my eyes out for. And there you have it. There is a bunch of backwards compatible disc-only games on the Xbox 360 that you can play on the Xbox One, you can play on the Series X. Pick them up now. You can play them on those modern consoles. Some of them, once again, will get those upscaling graphics, get the better performance, or just allow you to play it on a modern system, which I am still in the market for a Series X. One of these days I'll pick one up, and part of it is because it has the ability to play these backwards compatible games. And that's really it. I have no interest in any Xbox One or Series X games, other than maybe the new Indiana Jones game, but then didn't they say it was coming out for other consoles too after 6 months to a year? So I'll probably just wait for that. But yeah, that's what you get for this week, guys. Thank you again for another week. Thank you for letting me do some stuff that's not just Xbox. I know the PS3 video went over well. I've had some people recommend the Wii. I know I have a lot of Switch games I can talk about, PS4, or I can go even farther back. I got Genesis, I got NES, SNES, Super, N64, you name it. Like, we can do this with all the different systems, and I'm happy to do it. I love talking about games. And just thank you guys all so much for being here. Thank you for coming back. You know, the retention I've had this year has been incredible. You know, I keep saying it. I'm gonna keep saying it. Thank you guys. You really make this so ingratiating to make for you. I love educating, talking about games, and being educated. I've learned so many great games this year because of you guys. So thank you again. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.